Life without parole. The Supreme Court considers a case that could change the way young criminals are sentenced. From private to public, the Vatican denounces the leak of a private letter from Cardinals to Pope Francis. Dems debate in Vegas, the stage set for the first Democratic debate of the long presidential campaign season. And miracles multiplied. On this 98th anniversary of Fatima's Miracle of the Sun, we recall a miraculous mine rescue 5 years ago. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, October 13th, 2015. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick with your news now. Dutch investigators release a final report on the Malaysian Airlines flight that went down over Ukraine in 2014. It confirms MH17 was blown out of the sky by a missile, ultimately causing the deaths of everyone on board. Watch closely as the heavily damaged forward section of Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 takes shape. This reconstruction reveals what likely happened over eastern Ukraine July 17, 2014. The report by the Dutch Safety Board concludes the Boeing 77 was taken down by a surface-to-air missile, killing all 298 people on board.
The warhead exploded on a location in space less than 1 cubic meter to the left of and above the cockpit, spraying its fragments in a characteristic radial circular pattern originating from the missile.
Investigators determined hundreds of iron fragments ripped through the cockpit, killing the flight crew and causing devastating structural damage to the fuselage. The forward section of the plane eventually broke away, crashing into a field nearly 5 miles from the rest of the wreckage. Dutch officials and those from 4 other countries, including the United States, maintain the warhead fit a Russian-made Buk missile system. The Russians, who also took part in the investigation, disagree. They insist it was not possible to confirm the kind of weapon used. So why was MH17 allowed to fly over an armed conflict zone in the first place? The chairman of the Dutch Safety Board now believes the airspace should have been closed.
Almost all operators were flying over that area. And why? Because nobody thought that civil aviation was at risk.
The final official report on MH17 may answer many questions, but it will likely do little to ease the pain of families who lost loved ones on that flight. And today, Ukraine's foreign minister defends his country's decision not to close its airspace to passenger flights. He says no one in Kiev knew that Russia had brought highly sophisticated anti-aircraft missiles into Ukraine. Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. The Supreme Court considers if inmates imprisoned for life for murders they committed as teenagers should get a chance to seek freedom. Jason Calvi reports from the High Court tonight.
Brian, 52 years ago, 17-year-old Henry Montgomery shot and killed a sheriff's deputy in Baton Rouge. He's now serving a life sentence. He's 69 years old, but he's hoping the Supreme Court will give him the chance to get out of prison before he dies.
Public defender argued Montgomery's case.
All indications are he's been a model prisoner. He mentors to younger people. He started a boxing program, and he's just waiting for this decision.
In 2012, the Supreme Court struck down automatic life sentences with no chance of release for teenage killers. The question today, does that ruling apply to earlier cases?
It's a matter of fundamental fairness. The Supreme Court ruled that a mandatory life without parole sentence is unconstitutional. And I think in our system of justice, the ability to benefit from that ruling shouldn't turn on the date on which you were convicted.
If Louisiana loses, a judge will hold a new sentencing hearing for Montgomery, looking at his background.
Our whole point is it's very difficult. In fact, we think it's virtually impossible to do that in reverse. Looking back 50 years to put ourselves in his position 50 years ago, the penalty that is being served by those offenders is still a valid penalty.
Much of the debate revolved around if the Supreme Court even has the jurisdiction to rule in this case.
The fact that they spent so much time talking about jurisdiction suggests that there may well be 5 justices who may be inclined to say no jurisdiction, we'll take this issue up later on.
Both sides say the High Court does have jurisdiction to hear this case, but the Supreme Court appointed its own attorney that found that the decision rests with the state of Louisiana. If the Supreme Court decides not to hear this case, there are other similar cases working their way through the courts. Brian?
Jason Calvi from the Supreme Court. Thank you, Jason. In what can be seen as an admission of guilt, Planned Parenthood today announces it will no longer accept payment to cover costs of what it calls fetal tissue research. This after a recent series of undercover videos. They allegedly revealed the abortion provider profits from the sale of aborted baby parts. Planned Parenthood President Cecile Richards says some clinics will maintain their fetal tissue research programs. In response today, the president and CEO of Americans United for Life, Charmaine Yost, says the abortion industry views the remains of aborted infants as tissue or medical waste, not human corpses, and it should not be able to gain from its abortion practices. The Vatican is denouncing the leak of a private letter to Pope Francis from some cardinals concerned about the way the Synod is being run.
Il cardinale Pell ha dichiarato, è una dichiarazione che è stata pubblicata, che una lettera fatta avere al Papa era riservata e doveva rimanere riservata.
Father Federico Lombardi referring to Cardinal George Pell of Australia, who said the letter was private and should remain private. Dr. Matthew Bunson with Catholic Distance University is here. Tell us what this letter is about and what its impact is on the Synod.
Right. Well, a few days ago on the website of a noted Vaticanista, a letter was published, supposedly signed by 13 cardinals, including Cardinal Pell, that was sent to Pope Francis a week ago Monday, expressing concerns and reservations about the way the Synod is being conducted. Within 24 hours, 4 of the cardinals denounced the letter, saying that they were not even signatories to it. And 2 others, one of them Pell and another Cardinal Napier from South Africa, expressed their concerns with the leak, but also with the fact that the contents were very different from the ones that they actually sent to the Holy Father. So what we can deduce from this is that we have a situation much like Vati leaks, where we need to denounce this. We have to be very careful in how we cover stories like this, in part because we have a very hyper-partisan media atmosphere. And there's another media risk here too, and that is treating cardinals in a way who sent a private communication to the Holy Father as criminals, as somehow treasons, when in fact they're doing their job as members of the College of Cardinals, as advisors to the Pope.
So where does the Synod go from here, and how might this affect the outcome of it?
Yeah, well, Cardinal Napier and Cardinal Pell both have expressed since the sending of the letter their satisfaction with the way that the Synod is unfolding. They're actually quite happy that the Holy Father himself made a very unusual appearance at the Synod the day after their letter was sent, reassuring everyone about the doctrine of marriage and about how the process was unfolding. Since then, the Synod has, by almost every measure, been running very smoothly. The bishops are not existing in their own hyper-polarized atmosphere. They're actually grappling with the issues facing the Church.
And meanwhile, the Vatican Sex Abuse Commission has come out with some recommendations.
It has. They just had their second plenary session, bringing together experts from around the world who belong to the Commission. They're assisting Episcopal conferences around the world in crafting specific norms for wherever they are. We have to remember that the Church exists and is trying to craft norms in democracies and dictatorships. We have to be very careful how we go about this, but they're also advocating additional screening, better seminary training, and ongoing care of the victims of sex abuse. This has been a severely underreported story.
Well, thank you for bringing us up to date, Dr. Matthew Bunson.
Great pleasure to be with you.
Israelis and Palestinians clash in the West Bank town of Bethlehem as a wave of violence continues. Protesters throw rocks at Israeli forces. They respond with tear gas and rubber bullets. Tensions are high following 4 attacks against Israelis by Palestinians in Jerusalem and the Israeli city of Ra'anana. A month-long wave of violence has resulted in fatalities on both sides. Meanwhile, the EU's border control agency says the number of migrants entering that region is down somewhat. 170,000 migrants were tracked entering the European bloc in September, down from a record high of 190,000 in August. The total number of migrants between January and September is 710,000, with the Greek islands taking the brunt of the influx. Tonight, 5 Democratic presidential candidates meet in Las Vegas for their first primetime debate. Catherine Zeltner has more tonight.
Brian, tonight's debate is a chance for the experienced candidates to flex their debate muscles and for the lesser-known ones to break through. Democratic Debate Day is here. What happens in Vegas could shake up the next stage of the race for 5 presidential hopefuls. Seasoned debater Hillary Clinton, backed by solid early poll numbers in key states, is establishing her presence at these debates. The former Secretary of State making an unannounced stop at a union rally at Donald Trump's Vegas hotel, taunting the business tycoon.
Some people think Mr. Trump is entertaining, but I don't think it's entertaining when somebody insults immigrants, insults women. If you are going to run for president, then you should represent all the people of the United States.
Bernie Sanders, who has yet to do a mock debate, insists he's going to play nice, as long as his competitors do. The Vermont senator continues to pick up traction, seeing crowds 13,000 strong in Tucson, Arizona.
Let's treat each other civilly, let's treat each other respectfully, and let's not try to demonize people who may have disagreements with us.
A stark contrast to the strategy of their counterpunching Republican rivals.
I'd love to run against her because she is so flawed. I think she's very beatable, but she shouldn't even be allowed to run.
Meanwhile, Jim Webb, Lincoln Chafee, and Martin O'Malley have a tough road ahead, all looking for a breakout moment on the stage. But in a betting town like Vegas, anything is possible. CNN has been holding a 6th podium just in case Joe Biden decided to join the debate at the last second, but it looks as if the vice president will be watching from home. Brian.
Catherine, thank you. Tim Carney is senior political columnist at the Washington Examiner. Is there a benefit for Vice President Biden to stay away from this debate?
I think Biden is still deciding whether he has a chance to win, and that is going to be determined by whether or not Hillary Clinton looks vulnerable and makes any missteps. So for him sitting this out, it gives him a chance to say, is this front runner? Is this a woman I can defeat? And if she dominates today, I think that makes his decision easy. While if she stumbles, he doesn't have to be the one to beat her up, but still she looks weak.
We saw Carly Fiorina make a real breakout in the second GOP debate. Do any of the second-tier Democratic candidates have that opportunity tonight?
Martin O'Malley, the former governor of Maryland, he certainly does. He's a good politician. The reason he's so low in the polls is nobody really knows who he is. And I'm a Marylander, so I know who he is. I'm a political reporter. Most people don't, though. He has good political skills. He comes across well. He is in touch with the Democratic base. So that's who I would be looking for to do very well. Just by introducing himself to the voters, I think he will do well.
Do you think he'll go after Hillary Clinton, the frontrunner?
I think he might be the only one to really attack her. You've seen Bernie Sanders say, I'm not that into attacking other Democrats. I'm not going to do it, even though he has sharp difference in views from Hillary. While O'Malley, he does see that he has to draw these distinctions. He has to show why Democrats maybe shouldn't distrust or put a lot of faith in Hillary. So I do think O'Malley will be the one to make the attacks.
Tim, there seems to be a very straight line between the Democrats and Republicans on issues such as life and marriage. Do pro-life, pro-marriage voters have any options in the Democratic Party now?
Not really. I mean, since for the last couple decades, the parties have really split along those lines to the point that you can barely even be a pro-life Democrat and get a time on the Democratic podium at the convention, much less have a chance at the nomination. So as it stands now, the abortion issue in the Republican field, basically everybody except for some minor candidates are pro-life. And in the Democratic field, they're all strongly pro-choice, and there's not much middle ground.
So how do you see this debate maybe differing from the GOP debates? Obviously, the size will make it different.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be a lot easier to have this discussion debate with 5 people there. The Democrats have pushed, I think, for that not to be as confrontational. There was definitely good TV entertainment value in having the Republicans clash with each other. I also think that that's good to inform viewers and voters, that they like to see the arguments and disagreements. For Democrats, they sort of err more on the side of just sort of explaining and reducing the conflict. That's one of the big aims for the Democrats. I think CNN will go along with that. And mostly, you don't have Donald Trump on the Democratic stage, so there goes 90% of the entertainment value.
Yeah. From the Washington Examiner, Tim Carney, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Coming up, the backstory of SuperPACs and the huge role they play in a presidential election. And recalling the triumphant rescue of 33 miners in Chile 5 years ago today. Let us learn solidarity. Without solidarity, our faith is dead. An interesting tweet from Pope Francis today as the Synod on the Family continues in Rome. Thanks for joining us this Tuesday evening. I'm Brian Patrick. A SuperPAC spends $250,000 for a new TV ad trying to persuade the vice president to run for president. The SuperPAC pulled its first ad last week at Vice President Joe Biden's request. This new ad airs on CNN just before tonight's debate. Biden has been considering a 2016 run for months. His first deadline is October 29th, when presidential hopefuls must declare their intent to the state of Georgia. Meanwhile, a Catholic legal scholar launches a new campaign for life, marriage, and religious liberty. The Campaign for American Principles, SuperPAC, aims to elect candidates who might fight for the First Amendment, who will fight for the First Amendment, the Defense Act, the defund Planned Parenthood, and the defeat of the Equality Act. The social conservative SuperPAC was launched last week. And Dr. Robert George from Princeton University, the founder of the Campaign for American Principles. Can you first explain what a SuperPAC is?
Yeah, SuperPAC is a way for citizens to pool their resources, to put some money together, to enter the political arena and advocate on behalf of a cause that they believe in. They can support a candidate who is in favor of the cause. They can oppose a candidate who is opposed to the cause. What they cannot do is coordinate with anybody's campaign. So it's an independent expenditure operation, but it's a way for us to influence the people who govern us, the people who make policy.
Why did you take this leap? This seems like a big move for you.
Because nobody else was doing it, and
we
need a SuperPAC that's there advocating for the causes that many Catholics, evangelicals, Orthodox Jews, LDS people, Muslims, and others believe in: sanctity of human life in all stages and conditions.
What do you hope this SuperPAC can do during this campaign season?
Put a lot of pressure on people in 2016, especially those who gain their party's nominations for president, to come down on the right side of religious liberty, of the sanctity of human life, as marriage is the conjugal union of husband and wife. Politics is the lifeblood, the mother's milk of, money is the lifeblood, the mother's milk of politics. And if we're going to influence how our legislators and our president govern us, we're going to have to influence the election. The way you influence the election is by pooling resources, putting money together. People on the other side of these issues, for Planned Parenthood or for the same-sex marriage lobby, do this all the time. And we get defeated if we do not raise money and respond.
They have some big money behind them. Can you come up with that?
I think millions of citizens can pool their nickels and dimes and quarters together, and we can put a formidable defense behind the issues, the causes we believe in.
What kind of feedback are you getting already?
Oh, very positive feedback. People have rallied to the cause because people want to know, what can we do to make a difference? A lot of people have felt helpless. The Supreme Court hands down a ruling and suddenly the votes of millions of people are wiped out on the marriage issue. Roe versus Wade, after 40-something years, people still don't have an opportunity to decide for themselves as voters, as citizens, whether we're going to defend the lives of innocent unborn children. People want a chance. This gives people a chance. People want to know, what can I do? Just an ordinary citizen, a guy who's working hard 5, sometimes 6 days a week, a mom who's at home or is working hard outside the home. What can I do? I'm just a little person. Well, we can pool our resources together and we can get behind these causes we believe in. We can elect candidates who are with us and we can defeat candidates who are against us.
Where can we find out more about the Campaign for American Principles?
At campaignforamericanprinciples.org, or just do an online search, a Google search for Campaign for American Principles. Every citizen can see exactly what he or she can do to help the cause.
All right, Dr. Robert George, we'll have you back for an update. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Pleasure.
An effort to free trapped minors in Chile came to a dramatic conclusion 5 years ago today. Nearly 3 months after 33 Chilean minors were trapped more than 2,000 feet underground, the first of the minors was pulled to safety through a special capsule on October 13, 2010. All 33 were eventually rescued. A film about the Chilean mine drama called The 33 will be released in theaters next month. Up next, the role of the family in vocations to the priesthood and religious life. And 2 beer brewing giants make a merger. "98 years ago today, tens of thousands witnessed what's known as the miracle of the sun. It happened near Fatima, Portugal, where the shepherd children reported seeing monthly apparitions. Witnesses that day saw the sun spin and careen to earth in a zigzag pattern. Thanks for joining us this Tuesday, October 13th. I'm Brian Patrick. A new report examines the role of families in nurturing vocations to the priesthood and religious life. A Georgetown University group surveyed more than 1,000 men and women religious and about 1,000 priests and seminarians. The group then contacted the respondents' family members. This research shows there are no typical families, but there are major trends. More than half of men and women religious attended Catholic school at some point. 2 in 3 religious say their family attended Mass or religious services weekly. And 2 in 3 report their family gathered at least once a week for an activity other than a meal, such as a game night. Dr. Mary Gautier is the author of this study, a senior research associate at the Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate at Georgetown University, or CARA for short. So what were the main family practices that helped to bring these vocations to their fruition?
Sure, it's kind of the things you would expect, things that help build Catholic identity in children and help nurture a culture of Catholicism in the family. Things like going to Mass on a regular basis, praying together as a family, being active in parish life, also talking about your faith with your family members, and then bringing up vocations.
There was a time, probably quite a few years ago, when to have a priest or a religious in your family was a big deal. Our culture has changed so much that there's often resistance to that in a family. Do you find that anyone actually gets into these vocations when they meet that, or do they need the support of their family?
Well, the support of the family certainly helps. And we find that most of these men and women religious and priests and seminarians say that their family has been supportive of them. Most commonly their parents or siblings. Sometimes those farther out in the family have a little more problem supporting a vocation. It's still a little countercultural.
I think it is. What do you believe would be the major takeaway from the results of this survey?
Well, the major takeaway to me, it was a surprise that even these men and women religious and priests and seminarians, more than half of them said that starting a conversation about their vocation with their family was difficult for them. But if their family member, one or the other family members, had already spoken to them about a vocation, then 2 in 3 said that starting the conversation with their family wasn't that difficult.
So if mom were to say, have you ever thought of being a priest?
Exactly.
It would come a lot easier than for them to go, to start and to initiate.
At least to bring God into the conversation about what are you going to do when you grow up.
What about parish support? Did your survey address that at all, the parish family, how it might be supportive of vocations among its congregation?
This particular study was dealing specifically with families, but other CARA research shows that, yes, parish support is also important. And it's also important for family members to be involved in the parish. That makes a difference in the vocational decision as well.
I know that when I was a kid, being an altar boy was seen as a step toward an interest in the priesthood, and now we have girls serving as well. Do you see any impact from that?
It does make a difference. And even for women choosing to become a woman religious, they are also likely to have served as an altar girl, or to serve as a catechist or a musician in a youth group or in a Newman Center.
Active in their parish.
All of those things make a difference.
Mary Gautier, the co-author of the study at CARA from Georgetown, thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, the world's top 2 beer bakers joined forces. SAB Miller accepted a takeover bid by Anheuser-Busch InBev. The new company controls 1/3 of the beer market in the world with annual sales of nearly $75 billion. This merger brings together top U.S. brands, Budweiser and Miller Genuine Draft, and Italian brand Peroni, among other European brands. Italians are confident their favorite beer will stay the same.
Una tradizione così importante per l'Italia.
A customer saying Peroni is a long-standing tradition in Italy, and the merger could make it even better, and I hope we didn't make you too thirsty. Until tomorrow, we encourage you to like us on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter. Watch again on EWTN's YouTube page. For the EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Brian Patrick. Good night. God bless you.